I don't believe that for a minute. GM would sell you a car that ran on pig shit if it sold.
Car makers argued that there was not enough demand for the electric car. Claiming to have spent millions of dollars on advertising, they said buyers weren't interested. But did consumers even know that the car existed?
Did you hear this? Did you ever see this car advertised or anything about it?
Never. That's what I'm trying to say. It's totally under the scope of the radar.
I don't know who drives an EV1, actually.
You don't know anybody?
Anybody. Maybe Fernando. I know Fernando. Fernando, did you ever drive an EV1?
I've heard of him.
He's heard of them.
They're not making those cars in California anymore?
No, they're not making them anywhere.
That's really too bad. We need those cars.
So why are they getting rid of it?
Well, they said that there's no demand for the car.
Are they insane? That's a no-brainer. Of course there's a demand.
Save gas, save people, save air, save oxygen, save the world. All sounds good to me.
We've been selling vehicles for a century, and as you might imagine, we sort of figured out what people wanted. If you ask them, they say, well, I want a 300-mile range, I want to be able to go 85 or 90 miles an hour, and I want to carry 4 passengers and have a big trunk, which is basically what we were already selling.
I've said this time and time again, people will buy anything you convince them to buy. You feed people enough, and they believe that's the diet.
Consumers, they couldn't see the difference between an electric car and a car they were already driving, because they don't read environmental impact. They don't read political instability caused by oil production in the Middle East. All they read is, does this car work and how much does it cost?
What really killed EVs was American consumers because they did not accept this idea, did not embrace it, that vehicles could have these limited ranges and still be functional, useful, practical.
Did the electric car die because of battery technology? Did EVs really not have enough range? And did car companies use the best batteries available?
Battery technology at that time was lead-acid batteries and allowed the car to go 60 miles. If you started out on a trip knowing that you were going to go dead in 60 miles, you'd be nervous about making the trip.
People think that they need a car that will go 300 miles and be able to charge it up or refuel it in 5 minutes. For virtually 90–95% of your driving, you really don't need that. You need a vehicle that will go at least 60 miles or so, and that way your daily commute is covered.
For those who wanted greater range from an EV, 100 miles or more, a better battery already existed, developed by a well-known inventor working in Troy, Michigan, about 30 miles from General Motors headquarters.
I'm standing.
And Iris Ovshinsky. I think you shouldn't do it that way. You should say you're Stan Ovshinsky, and then I'll say I'm Iris Ovshinsky. Don't do it that way. That's funny.
With over 200 patents to his name, Stan Ovshinsky had pioneered a new battery, and GM purchased controlling share of his company.
We were chosen over 60 different big companies like Westinghouse and others who wanted to win the race to make the batteries that would be used in pure electric cars. And we were chosen because we had a battery. And to us, putting it into a car was not the most gigantic thing. What did we were supposed to do?
But you did sort of expect champagne and roses.
I expected champagne and roses. When I said that we were going to put in a paragraph into a newspaper that said we had achieved this, I really expected congratulations to flow in. And then I knew that something was different when the opposite happened.
Ovshinsky was censured for publicizing his battery advances without permission and asked not to run advertising in national publications. The EV1 debuted with a weaker battery. It would be another 2 years before Ovshinsky's batteries were installed in the EV1.
The first version of the EV1 had defective Delco batteries in them, and they kept failing. So that was GM's failure on those batteries. Once they put good batteries in, they didn't have any problems.
Ultimately, GM sold its share in Ovshinsky's company to an unlikely buyer.
Then when the nickel metal hydride batteries were improved so that they're now lasting longer than the life of the car and cheaper than an engine, Chevron Texaco stepped in and purchased control from General Motors of Ovshinsky technology. The oil companies do not feel threatened by battery technology because they effectively crushed it.
You know, the electric car is kind of an interesting case study. I mean, it was such an abysmal failure that I think there are a lot of people involved in the initial decision-making and trying to pointing fingers at whose responsibility it is.
To Basra and all Iraq comes good news with the opening of a new oil field. The pipeline runs across the desert to the Persian Gulf at Fayal. There, tankers load up with the precious fuel the world needs so badly. Yes, it's a big day for Iraq, and there's a feast to celebrate. Sheep stuffed with rice and a host of other good things. But that's only the first of the good things that will come to Iraq, thanks to oil.
Oil companies have rarely shied away from global issues, but why did they lobby so hard to build public opposition to the electric car in California?
I find it difficult to rationalize why the oil industry got so intimately involved in this, other than maybe they saw it as a threat to what I would call the monopoly they had on providing the transportation fuel.
There's no question that people who control the marketplace today, the oil companies, have a strong incentive to discourage alternatives, except the alternatives that they themselves control. And, you know, just as General Motors 40, 50 years ago bought up the trolley systems and shut them down, the oil companies have opposed the creation of an electric infrastructure.
I differ strongly with that. We did not kill the electric car. The petroleum industry did not kill the electric car. What killed the electric car was antiquated technology. It's a good example, and it's something that we should not repeat, an example that we need to avoid.
There's still roughly 1 trillion barrels worth of oil in the Earth's crust. And if you figure that the average price of that subsequent oil will be $100 a barrel, that's $100 trillion worth of business yet to be done. However, at some point, when an alternative is good enough, people will snap over. And that's what the oil companies fear the most.
We use 280 million gallons of gasoline a week in California. Right now, the price is $2.20. Well, a year ago, it was $1.20. Okay, there's $1 more a gallon. Somebody's making $280 million more a week this year. It's the same gas, the same pipelines, the same refineries. The profits are outstanding.
What the oil companies feared is that electric vehicles would become successful 6 years from now. What the automobile companies feared was that they'd be losing money on electric vehicles in the next 6 months.